The survey found that the statistical chance of someone from a poor background being accepted at one of the country's most respected universities are far lower than those of a student from a wealthy family. This means that the inequalities in society are likely to be passed down from one generation to the next. Every morning, no matter how late he had been up, my father rose at 5:30, went to his study, wrote for a couple of hours, made all breakfast, read a paper with mother, and then went back to work. For the rest of the morning, many of years passed before I realized that he did this for a living. Every morning, no matter how late he had been up, my father rose at 5:30, went to his study, wrote for a couple of hours, made us all breakfast, read the paper with my mother, and then went back to work for the rest of the morning. Many years passed before I realized that he did this for a living. Although it comes from a remote region in the Himalayas, this plant now looks entirely at home on the banks of English rivers. Brought to the UK in 1839, it quickly escaped colonizing river banks and damp woodlands. Now it is spreading across Europe, New Zealand, and Canada. In the Himalayas, the plant is held in check by various pests, and it grows and reproduces unhindered. While yellow is considered an optimistic, while yellow is considered an optimistic color, people lose their tempers more often in yellow rooms, and babies will cry more. It is the most difficult color for the eye to take in, so it can be overpowering if overused. Orientalists, like many other early 19th century thinkers, conceive of humanity either in large collective terms in abstract generalities. Orientalists are neither interested in nor capable of discussing individuals. Instead, artificial entities predominate, predominate they herd beneath very wide labels. Every possible variety of human plurality. Orientalists, like many other early 19th century thinkers, conceive of humanity either in the large collective terms or in abstract generalities. Orientalists are neither interested in nor capable of discussing individuals. Instead, artificial entities predominate; they herd beneath very wide levels every possible variety of human plurality, reducing it in the process to collective abstractions. Children as young as 14 months old will spontaneously help others for no reward, but a study of 3 to 5 years old found that, although they would spontaneously draw pictures If they were given a reward for drawing pictures, then later they wouldn't make any drawings unless a reward was offered. Children as young as 14 months old will spontaneously help others for no reward. Children as young as 14 months old will spontaneously help others for no reward. But a study of 3 to 5 years olds found that although they would spontaneously draw pictures, if they were given a reward for drawing pictures, then later they wouldn't make any drawings unless a reward was offered.
Students are not allowed to take journals out of the library.
Students are not allowed to take journals out of the library.
There are many people in the USA who are critical of their voting system.
There are many people in the USA who are clinically based in the voting system.
Results will be available in the main quad and online.
Result will be available at online.
His academic supervisor called in to see him last night.
His academic supervisor called him last night.
The head of department isn't available till Thursday.
The head of the department isn't available this Thursday.
The problems facing us today are global and therefore need global solutions.
The problem we have facing today are global and therefore we need global solutions.
In the 1880s, cycling became a major phenomenon in Europe.
In the ice ring is a major problem in Europe.
Please take these up to Mr. Mitchell in the chemistry lab.
Please take this up to Mr. Texture in the chemistry lab.
Modern business has to adapt and be flexible in order to survive.
Modern textures has been flexible in order to survive.
The mock trial aims to increase interest in the law and the judicial process.
The mock trial aims to goes to the law and to aims this process.
The qualities needed by a successful business manager are similar to those needed in sport.
The qualities needed to the processes needed to the sport.
Evidence for clear correlations of brain events and behavioural events are always fascinating.
Evidence for clearance are always be fascinating. The line graph is about the gender pay gap from Scotland and UK in 1927 to 2005. Firstly, we can see that the Scotland pay percent from 1997 started in 16%, goes up to 1998 with this what we call 19%, and it goes down until 2005. Moreover, when we talk about the United Kingdom pay gap percent, it started into 18% in 1997, has a drastically down in 1920 or 2008. In conclusion, this is important. The given image is about an interesting topics based on many different categories. Firstly, this bar graph it talks about the rate of the households with selected consumer durable in United Kingdom. We can see here from the 2001 to 2002 that the telephone and the microwave, the CD player and micro mobile plan has this one, and also this the 2007 we can see that the telephone and the microwave and the CD player and the mobile phone has the less priority, and this is the picture of very important. Thank you. The given image is about an interesting topics based on many different categories. The bar graph talks about the precipitation and average of temperature. Firstly, we can see that the bar graph has the highest precipitation or the minimum precipitation at the month of October. And moreover, we can see that the average temperature starting in January goes up starting in the 100 and it goes up in July and then till down in August, but it goes up again in September. However, it goes down in December. So these pictures gives an important information. Thank you. The given image is about an interesting topic based on many different categories. The bar graph is talks about the amount of food wasted per year in United Kingdom in megatons. Firstly, we can see that the private household thrown away, but then the least one is the food and drink manufacturers. Moreover, we can see that they save and recycle in the year of move and the year of 2 megaton per year, which has food and drink. Furthermore, we can see that these pictures gives important information regarding hospitality sector and institution. Thank you.
To begin with, how underfunded is UK higher education? The table shows the proportion of gross domestic product spent on institutions by the main OECD countries for the latest year, for which we have statistics, 2001. It shows that UK spending, public and private, on higher education institutions was at 1.08%, well below the OECD mean of 1.34% of GDP. The table clearly shows that the UK is in the bottom 5 countries of the 20 in the table in terms of public expenditure on tertiary education, its spending being proportionately equal to that of Italy and Mexico. At the other end of the table, we see that Denmark and Finland allocate most public money to tertiary education, spending twice as high a proportion of GDP on it as does the UK.
The lecturer talks about the expenditure on educational institutions as a percentage of GDP with a tertiary education between 2001, and we can see this the different places which as the Denmark, Finland, Canada, Sweden, nursery, Bagland and area, and we can also see also the Korea. However, we can see that the private has this in the Korea is the most highest, which has is 2.8 GDP, while the public starts with this Finland has the highest GDP in 1.5, and therefore the lecture says that is very important information to the society.
What is used to turn off an electric light?
Switch off. Button. Switch button.
What instrument allows you to see distant objects in space?
Microscope. Telescope. Microscope. Telescope.
What word is used to describe getting a higher position within the same company?
I don't know the answer. Apply a work.
What is the name of the land area containing a college or university?
College schools. University schools. College schools. University schools.
How many years are there in a century?
100 years. 100 years. 10,000 years. 1,000 years. This year, I don't know. This year's Nobel Peace Prize. However, if the balance between improving the quality of working jobs this could increase work stress among sustainable growth. Sustainable job growth is a motto for many governments, especially in the general matters. The problem of job quality is best addressed and may be seen as legal deposit to printed books and papers are listed in it. It helps to ensure that the nation's published output and thereby its financial record and future publicity is collected as systematically and comprehensively as possible, both in order to preserve the material for the use and to make it available for within the design legal deposit or borders within the designated legal. These are the British Library, the legal deposit system has also publication are recorded in the online catalog and will remain an essential remain an essential publication are recorded in the online catalog and will remain an essential management tool. New technologies are helping cities replace failing water infrastructure. Piping systems allow polymer-based materials to be inserted into old pipes to repair faults and technologies are helping cities replace failing water infrastructure. Piping systems allow polymer-based materials to be inserted into old pipes to repair faults and induce and protect leak. When it comes to managing wastewater, new systems are emerging. Such advanced and companies have realized that much can be achieved by examining their products at the fuel department, examining their products at their construction companies can increase the recyclable content of it. Amazing University Colleges has teamed up with a leading wildlife photographer to produce the living native book New Zealand's national bird. The Kiwi, a natural history was written by Dr. Isabel Castro and features Amazing University Colleges teamed up with a leading to produce the native book New Zealand's national bird. The Kiwi natural history was written by Castro and has featured Dr. Castro has been working with Kiwi since 1999. I've specifically been looking at the sense of smell that Kiwi use when foraging, but besides, Dr. Castro has been working with Kiwi with a focus on their behavior. I've especially been looking at the sense of the smell that kiwi use in raging, but besides in their interaction, but again, in their, but besides in their Besides in their interaction with their environment and other kiwi, she says they really are very unique where they are. The book covers all aspects of kiwi, from their evolution, prehistory, and closest relatives to their feeding and breeding behaviors and current conservative issues. Makes this perfect introduction. The book covers all aspects of kiwi, from their evolution, prehistory, and closest relatives to their feeding and breeding behavior and has made this perfect introduction for anyone with an interest in these fascinating birds. This is the second little title in a new sequel on set sequel on conservative issues. The book covers all aspects, from the evolution, prehistory, and closest relatives to the breeding and breeding and current conservation issues. Made this made this made this the perfect making this the perfect introduction for anyone has made this perfect. A working day of an astronaut could be spent inside or outside the spacecraft. Inside, routine monitoring and maintenance on the craft is held out alongside is carried out alongside the scientific testing and experimentation. These can include investigation of the effects of space travel, space journey on the human body, testing the product using which will benefit future space and generation. Commercial organization and send experiments into space because they want them to research under condition of weakness. They want them to appear under. Commercial organizations send experiments into space because they want them to A working day of the astronaut could be spent inside or outside the spacecraft. Inside, commercial organizations send experiments into space because they want them to research under conditions because they want them to appear under conditions of work within a work outside a spacecraft is called extravehicular activity. Work within a spacecraft. An astronaut will either be tethered to his craft or will wear a man-made maneuvering unit, a kind of powered backup. He might be deploying the satellites and settling experience for building space stations. Settling up working day of astronauts could be spent inside or outside. The greater challenge of critical analysis synthesis for this reason, used in a variety of courses and various specific, asking the right questions helps students bridge the gap between simple memorizing of blind text data information and greater challenge of critical analysis and synthesis. For this, in such case, for this reason, instead, this concise text teaches specifically this concise text teaches students to think critically with exploring why exploring the conformism critically over critically into exploring by exploring manipulation and obstacles and on how to spot fallacies and manipulation and obstacles against obstacles for critical thinking involved on how to spot fallacies and manipulations and obstacles in critical thinking in both written it teaches them to respond to and it teaches them how responding to all teaching them to respond to all teaching them when to teaching them blank to alternative points in teaching them how to in teaching them to respond to all in teaching them the response them to respond. You will need to select more than one response. Research studies cannot. Research study. The steps and scientific method guide research in planning, conducting, and interpreting research studies. However, it is important to recognize some of the limitations of such disciplinary inquiry approach. For example, it cannot provide answers to questions. It cannot provide answers to questions that seek to determine. Some questions are not answered by research studies because of collecting data will not resolve. Research studies cannot answer complex questions about values and provide exhaustive details about site information. Examine variables in context, provide a measurable data. It is recognized among limited resources disciplined inquiry approach. For example, it cannot provide answers to questions that seek to determine what should be done. Some questions are not answerable by research studies because collecting data will not resolve that question or because the question answers Secondly, the research studies can never capture the full reach of the individual site they study. Although some research approaches lead to deeper understanding the research context than others, no approach provides full comprehension of site. Thirdly, there are limits of the hours of research technology. Our data collection instruments research studies cannot include inventory, cannot examine variables in the context, cannot provide measurement, cannot answer complex questions about the values. And data collection instrument and available sources are primitive in comparison to instrument. Say medicine evaluation instrument always have some degrees. The variables we study are often proxies. For example, with multiple choice tests. Finally, educational research is carried out with the cooperation of participants who agree to provide research and data. These research deal with the human beings. They must consider a number of ethical concerns. Must shelter participants from potential harm. They must inform participants. Exploitation. Cannot answer complex question about values, cannot include voluntary, cannot examine variables in a context, cannot provide measurable data. Once you have done this, you have set it. To be a good leader, once you have done, be a good leader, to be a good listener, you must learn to focus and concentrate on the other main points of the lecture. Get them. Once you have done this, you have set the stage of successful learning. Get them down and your main job in taking lecture. To be a good listener, you must learn to focus and concentrate on the main points of the lecture. Your main job. To be a good listener, you must learn to focus and concentrate on the main points of the lecture. Your main job in taking lectures knows is to be a good listener. Get them down and then later organize. Once you have done this, you have set the stage for successful. Your main job to be a good listener. Your main job in taking lectures notes is to be a good listener. To be a good listener, you must learn to focus and concentrate on the main points of the lecture. Get them down. Your main job is taking lecture notes is to be a good listener. To be a good listener, you must learn to focus and concern on the main topics of the lectures. Get them down and then material has been collected. The site lists the site lists on not only in published books and articles but also manuscripts and all of publication in a variety of media and including reprints and translation. This site contains a comprehensive listing. The site lists not only his published books and articles but also manuscripts and in variety of media. And this site contains a comprehensive listing of the works. Norbert Elias, the German socialist. The material has been catalogued, cross-referenced, and organized by date. There is, however, no research facilities. A sea level rise of a meter. A sea level rise of 1 meter would science estimated that the sea level rise of dimension. Today, this number could increase rapidly if the sea level rose. Sea level Individuals, human, are relatively powerless creative. It's what can do as a group that has blank as to take over the planet. Individuals, humans, are relatively powerless creatures. It's what we can do as groups that has interconnected us, that has enabled us to take over the planet. These groups, corporations, religions, states are now part of a vast network of interconnected information flows, finding points of the resistance where smaller units can included can come up to the waves. Individuals, human, are relatively powerless creatures. It's what we can do as a group that has enabled us to take over the planet. This group is corporation. Since the last papal reform, several proposals have been offered to make the Western calendar more useful or regular, more useful or addendums. Very few reforms have gained official acceptance. Sharks killed 4 people and injured 58 others around the world in 2000, comparatively dull year for dangerous encounters between the two species. Sharks' bite numbers grew steadily over the last century as the human population increased and swam more time and spent more time at the seashore, but the numbers have stabilized over the past 5 years as overfishing has as overfishing has horrified the shark population. And swimmers have swam about the risk of have spent about the risk and learned more time and swam more time. Steadily, sharks' bite numbers grew steadily over the last century as the human population increased. As the last century, increased and spent more time. Shark bites numbers grew. Has credited a major journal on Michael Madigan has published over 100 research papers, has co-edited a major interest in photographic bacteria, and has served as the chief editor of the His non-scientific undertakings includes he lives beside a quiet Parents often suggest about their children are so different from one another. No two siblings are the same, not even identical twins. Parents often suggest about why their children are so different. Often determines. They'll say I them up. They forget that what no two siblings are the same, not even the identical twins. Parents often suggest about why their children are so different from often determines why they say I interpret them. I of they'll say I determines them up. I compensate them up. I did. Parents often brought about. Read the text, answer the multiple choice question by selecting the correct response only one. Write the conclusion for the essay. Remind the teacher of what he used to increase the length of the essay. Emphasize the main element of the essay. The work of a scientist and artist alike is presented of a pattern structure in the material and image for the work of either to fulfill its end. It's combined by the hero and the purpose of text is to point the social independence and the the work of scientists and artists alike is the presentation of form, pattern, structure, and materials, and verified scientific aspect of producing. Describe a general parallel between scientific and artistic work.
So I'm going to talk a little bit briefly about different systems of memory. And in fact, much of the memory that influences and guides out our everyday life actually kind of hides in the background. You actually don't know that when you're using the bulk of your memory. And this is called implicit or procedural memory. This includes things like cultural and social norms, so kind of understanding how you're supposed to behave in a classroom or expecting a certain thing to happen when you walk into a restaurant. These are all things that we've learned and acquired over our years, but it's not necessarily something that we think about. Language also, in many aspects, is something that is fairly automatic and that we've acquired and use very naturally, and other learned skills such as reading or driving. These are things that might have been effortful at one time, but now they just come very easily and automatically to us. And in fact, if you actually try to describe to somebody how you drive or how to drive, it actually kind of messes you up. So these are in a lot of cases, consciousness kind of gets in the way of a lot of these aspects of implicit memory. Now, when we're talking about our memory, so for instance, people tell me a lot that their memories are bad, when people are saying, when they talk about their memory, they're usually talking about explicit or episodic memory. And these are very different from implicit memories. These are memories that have a very specific tag of space and time. These are highly personal memories usually, so this could be everything from remembering what you ate for breakfast to what you did on your last vacation, or remembering a significant birthday that you had several years ago or in the past, or just an answer to a multiple choice question on a test.
At the moment, med students get very few chances to practice giving injections, with very expensive imported simulation pads being shared between 20 or so students in a class. Arjun and Jag really focused on developing a product that was accessible to all students.
With the different malls right now, we have both the standard unit and the professional unit. The standard unit is for people that have access to syringes and so on and so forth. So these are usually your nursing colleges and so on. And for them, we obviously don't want to put in unnecessary material to keep the cost down for them. Our primary goal was to have something that was affordable and efficient for students. You know, being students ourselves, we knew that was important right from the get-go.
Rebuilding carbon-rich agricultural soils is the only real, productive, permanent solution to taking excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere.
She's frustrated that scientists and politicians don't see the same opportunities she sees.
This year Australia will emit just over 600 million tonnes of carbon. We can sequester 685 million tonnes of carbon by increasing soil carbon by 0.5% on only 2% of the farms. If we increased it on all of the farms, we could sequester the whole world's emissions of carbon.
One of the things that people have said about agriculture is that on the whole it's more labour intensive than hunting and gathering. And that's one of the reasons why people have looked to explanations which you might say are kind of coercive factors, that people have been forced into agriculture because they had no alternative. That is ultimately what may happen. But at the very beginning, it could be that agriculture was developed because people wanted special status foods for feasting, that it was actually a social need. I mean, how much of what we do in our lives is generated by competition with others, and a lot of that is powered by desire for new things, new statuses, new whatever it might be, respect, recognition, also are important. And in small-scale societies, a lot of those sorts of factors are generated by the ability to, for instance, throw feasts. One possibility is that some of these foods that were being grown were actually intended specially as feasting foods.
Perhaps you remember the dire predictions from the analysts. The fall-off in housing threatened to drag down the entire economy. High energy prices would put the kibosh on consumer spending. Runaway inflation was poised to take off. David Weiss is an economist at Standard & Poor's. He says in the end none of those things happened in the final 3 months of last year.
There's an idea that essentially sleep allows a homeostatic readjustment of synapses. During wake, you're bombarded by experiences, and that leads to multiple synapses being engaged and their weights being changed. And then what sleep allows, and specifically actually slow wave sleep, is a pruning back off those unimportant synapses. So it's kind of like, I imagine in some senses, the judicial pruning of your roses to get a nicer flower. So the idea is that the slow wave sleep is able to prune back synapses that are energetically wasteful, but are also wasteful in an information processing account because they're adding noise. And that clearer, crisper signal then translates into improved performance the next day.
We need a bit of stress in our lives to keep us alert, to keep us going, but we also need to have that burst of stress that then is managed and drops again. It's when stress remains high constantly that we're in real problems. And that's the real concern with the way our society is organised today, is that we put people in situations that do leave them chronically stressed.
How difficult do you feel your life is at present?
To find out if Australian families are too stressed, the longitudinal study asks behavioural science questions.
How well do you think you're coping?
In Life at One, we add some biological science. We trawl the saliva of our parents and babies for a hormone called cortisol. When we're stressed, our physical response and the emotions we feel are triggered by chemicals released in our body. First is adrenaline, providing the increased heart rate every kid needs to escape a bully. But if the threat continues, our body goes on high alert and cortisol kicks in to shut down parts of the brain.
And the things that we shut down are things like rational thinking, memories, our immune system, and a range of other things that, I guess, through evolution, our body is determined that aren't necessary to deal with the immediate trauma.
But if a child is continually stressed, constantly shutting down their memory and immune system can seriously affect the way their brain grows.
Exposure to long periods of stress by young children leads to appropriate levels. Leads to areas of the brain function not necessary for immediate survival being shut down.
That's how they entered.
Now, when they start selling seeds, they sell hybrid seeds. They don't sell open-pollinated varieties that farmers can save. And they never tell the farmers, you can't save the seed. Farmers then plant out the hybrid next year and have very high rates of
Nonverbal communication refers to all of the messages we send other than the words themselves. It's all the aspects we think of as body language, our gestures, our posture, the way we walk, and how close we stand to others. It also includes our facial expressions, our eye movements, the way we dress, and the way we touch others. It even includes the way we say our words, our tone of voice, how loudly we speak, how quickly we speak, and special intonations like sarcasm, mocking, or sounding absolutely bored.
Consumers, of course, are also keeping an eye on prices, especially at the gas pump. When gasoline topped $3 a gallon last year, many drivers lost their enthusiasm for SUVs and started paying renewed attention to MPG. Another question mark for the industry is whether consumers and policymakers will maintain that focus on fuel efficiency, with gas prices in much of the country now closer to $2 a gallon.
Our director's experience of the play, Shakespeare, and theatre in general is second to none amongst drama school practitioners. The first week of the rehearsal process was spent in discussion of the background and subtext of each character, where they came from, their family, their social status. We then put each character into something called hot seating, which I'm sure you're familiar with. This is a process in which every other actor was able to ask our character a question and we answer it from our character's point of view.
The sociology department is highly regarded worldwide.
The sociology department is highly regarded worldwide. The sociology department is highly regarded worldwide.
She used to be the editor of the student newspaper.
He used to be the editor of the newspaper.
The placement test for mathematics and statistics is offered every semester.
The placement task. Placement task. Placement task.
They've been struggling since last year to make their servers pay.
They have been struggling since last year when the students unpaid.